Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go. Right, this morning we're talking about glimmers, which you suggested, and I really love this subject, Lucy, so much because I love glimmers and I love everything about them. So I don't know if you want to start by...
So I just basically, it kind of popped into my head. When did we message? It was last night, wasn't it? And I was really struggling. I was like, oh God, what are we going to talk about? And then I suddenly thought of glimmers. And so for anyone who doesn't know, they were actually the term glimmers was actually coined by somebody called Deb Dana, who's an American woman and who has written a book about like nervous system regulation. I can't remember the name of it, but I think if we sort of start there, because ultimately we're constant, and you know all about this because I mean you know a lot more about this than I do, but it's this idea that we want to always be returning to our parasympathetic nervous system from and one thing that basically we always want to kind of be bringing our nervous system back into balance as much as we can, and so many of us have got completely dysregulated nervous systems without even realizing it. And this is obviously it has such an impact on how we feel and how our lives are and our experience of life is so much about where we are on this. And I learned this really interesting way of thinking about it, which I hadn't heard before. It's thinking of it as a ladder, thinking of these three stages of our nervous system. So there's ventral, which is where we want to be, and then sympathetic, and then dorsal. So ventral is where we always want to aim to come back to, but it basically works like a ladder. And I found it really, really useful to think about it like a ladder, because essentially when you think about it like a ladder, it's really clear that we're constantly, all the time, 24/7, moving up and down this ladder. We're always somewhere on this ladder. We're either in ventral or in sympathetic or in dorsal. So ventral is where we want to be when our nervous system is regulated. Then there's sympathetic, which is when we're in that kind of fight or flight, and then further down at the bottom rung of that ladder is dorsal, which is where we are, completely disconnected. We don't have any energy. We just feel just like and can't be bothered. Just really not feeling good. And so the thing about glimmers is that it's not just like, oh yeah, go and find something that brings you joy. It's actually so much more than that, because it's actually glimmers really help to move you back up the ladder to that ventral part of our nervous system, that top rung, which is where, again, we want to spend most of our time. But so many of us are constantly slipping right the way down the ladder, either into sympathetic or even further down into dorsal. And glimmers I know some people talk about them as being the opposite of triggers. And we've talked about, I suppose it does kind of speak to this idea of finding little things that bring us joy. It's kind of the same thing. But if you think of a glimmer as, it can literally, and this is the great thing about glimmers, they can literally be something that just for 5 seconds or 10 seconds makes you feel good and makes you feel safe and makes you feel regulated. And the more we the more we look for glimmers throughout our day, and the more we get used to those moments of feeling good, actually we're kind of changing our set point for feeling good, and we're enabling ourselves to spend more time in that top rung of that ladder, in that ventral, that sort of parasympathetic state, which is what we want. And so, glimmers can be anything from from just really enjoying your cup of coffee, just noticing how good it tastes and how delicious it is. Or it can be, I always use the example of my cat, when I just look at him and just like stroke him and just like, he's completely divine, and he is like a glimmer in my life. And there are various ways, there are so many ways that we can find glimmers, nature. And actually, one thing I never thought of this, but you and I have talked about a lot about nature and how being in nature is so good for the nervous system. It's just so good for our body, our mind, our spirit. And actually, if you live in the middle of a fucking great city, you can look at photos of nature and you can get the same reaction, you can get the same feeling, and you can get the benefits just by looking at a picture. So if you're living in the middle of a city and you can't, your window doesn't look out onto trees and fields and green, you can literally just look at a picture on the internet of nature and you can get the same benefits, which I think is really, really cool. And also, one other thing just to say about Glimmers is that we can also, give other people glimmers by just simply, for example, smiling at somebody. Like if you smile at somebody when you walk past them in the streets, you are literally giving them a glimmer. So it's this idea that we're looking for glimmers for ourselves, but we're also able to kind of share the glimmer.
Yes, yeah, that is so cool. I mean, it's really about just bringing ourselves back into that ventral vagal state, that sort of really calm, connected state where we feel like, that's where we can be creative. That's where everything was working and flowing as it should be.
Yeah.
And when we go into the sympathetic, and sometimes we need to go into that state because it keeps us safe. Or if we're in that sort of dorsal vagal state when our nervous system is sort of in that freeze, fawn place, then actually these little glimmers are such a great way of just returning us back. And actually you'll notice, your breath will suddenly change, it will slow down, it will be, you're much, much calmer. They're like, it's a bit like, little breadcrumbs placed in your day to bring you back to that really nice, regulated, nice, happy state. And what was I going to say, actually? I was going to say something then. Oh, gosh.
Breadcrumbs.
Yeah, because actually they are... these moments are happening anyway. These really, the glimmers are happening, whatever. It's just our capacity and our ability to be able to notice them.
Yeah.
So they're there. They're always there. And it's not like you don't have to go and look for miracles or for like these big things to happen. You don't have to go out into nature or, they are happening everywhere. But it's can we tune into them? Can we notice them? Yesterday, for example, I really didn't want to, but I had to go into town and take something back to a shop, and it was like the last possible day I could do it. So I had to go in. So I was standing in Zara, and I was in a really long queue, and I was not really wanting to be there. And I saw this this baby in a pram. And this baby was so cute, and I was just watching this baby. Parents were sort of busy doing something else, and I just gave her a little smile. She was looking at me, and she had this most amazing, piercing blue eyes, and I just gave her a little smile, and her whole face just broke up into this amazing smile. Like her face just beat, and honestly, it was just like, oh my gosh, it was just, and nobody else knew it was happening apart from me and her. And that for me is like, wow, that was a glimmer, because she was just, it was just, we gave each other a little glimmer. Her face broke out, and then in return, that gave something back to me. And it was just such a joy seeing this little baby, give me the biggest, juiciest smile.
Yeah.
At a time where actually I was a bit like, oh, I don't really want to be here doing this. So it's just about noticing them in the moment. Another thing, actually, I've been banging on about recently at home, which I've loved, and maybe I don't know if this is a reflection of me just noticing more, or is it a reflection of me maybe getting older and just, I don't know. But my goodness, and maybe because we've got a slightly bigger garden than we've ever had before, I am noticing the birds in the garden. I absolutely love watching them. They come and peck at the grass, and I've noticed they always normally come in twos. And then, honestly, Lucy, it's giving me so much joy. So constantly looking at the birds, banging on about the birds to everybody. My gosh, look here, they are, they're back.
No,
But
no.
again, it gives me so much joy.
I'm completely with you, babe. I'm completely with you. And for me, it's like it's first thing in the morning when it's really super early, and on these amazing mornings where it's really light at 5 o'clock, it's already broad daylight, and the birds are singing, and it's just that sound of. Shall I tell you a funny bird story though? Actually, this was not a glimmer. Okay, this was my life this morning. I'll tell you what happened. So, woke up this morning, heard Johnny, my cat, crashing around. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, what is he up to now? He'd already given me an absolute heart attack because yesterday he disappeared for nearly 24 hours. He got back at 11 o'clock last night. I was literally, I just was, anyway, that was a whole thing. So this morning, woke up, crashing around, I was like, what the hell is he doing? This was at like 20 to 5. My alarm goes off at 4:59. So I was still, asleep. And I got out of bed and kind of went round to the kitchen, and he was doing something like I couldn't, basically I was half asleep, so I couldn't see exactly what was going on, but I was just like, oh, he's just mucking around, God knows. Got back into bed. And then suddenly I heard him go towards the sofa, right? And basically, that I'm living downstairs at my mum's at the moment, right? So basically my bed, to the left of my bed is a window. I know I'm going off on a complete tangent, but hey. And then there's a sofa under the window. And I saw Johnny go behind the sofa. And I was like, what is he doing? And then out of the other end of the sofa came a fucking blackbird walking out from behind the sofa. And I then literally was like, I cannot tell you how many birds I've had to rescue. A big, by the way, can I just say a big blackbird? They're quite big, right? This is a full-grown male adult blackbird. And I had cock-a-doodle-loo at 6 o'clock, my morning routine club. And as I did cock-a-doodle-loo, I could hear this noise in on the other side of the room, thinking, please, please, please don't let this bird start flapping around in the middle of cock-a-doodle-loo. And luckily it didn't. And then after cock-a-doodle-loo, I got rid of the bird. I managed to rescue it from Johnny and got it out the window. So there's sorry, I'd completely go off on a tangent, but just speaking of birds, that was my life this morning. This is the life of having Johnny Depp.
Not a glimmer. I would say that's definitely not a glimmer.
It's the opposite of a glimmer. But yes, going back to birds and their amazingness, yeah, I do the same in this garden. There are lots of birds, and they like what a friend of mine recently told me about an app. I can't even remember the name of it, but there is an app where you can record the bird song and find out what bird is making what sound, which is so incredible. But yes, things like that they're just easy wins. And it can be things like a glimmer can come in the form of the delicious smell of something cooking like I had a glimmer this morning when I ate my delicious protein rich breakfast, which was a 3-egg omelette with mushrooms and tomatoes and half an avocado. Bloody delicious. I also had another glimmer as I used my little electric whisk to whisk up my protein powder and drink that. That was a bit of a glimmer. Like just silly things like that. But if you allow yourself to recognize those moments, and again, it's not like we have to be sat there for 10 minutes going, oh yes, okay, I'm having a glimmer. It's like 5 or 10 seconds is enough to give the body what it needs to kind of start moving back up that ladder,
Yeah, and it's just sometimes it's just a matter of, everyone is busy, but it is just slowing down enough to be able to notice it.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is, as I said, they're always there, these glimmers. It's just, are you giving yourself that space, that capacity to actually even be able to notice it? So, and the thing is, people are like, oh, but I'm so busy, but actually you can still you'll probably get more done if you just slow down a fraction, you appreciate and become really present to what is in your surroundings and what is going on. And that is going to give you like that little boost of serotonin, probably that little boost of like feeling good. It's going to help you return to that ventral vagal more regulated state, so you will be able to get on and achieve so much more. This has been the biggest revelation for me, is you get more done just by slowing down and by giving yourself an opportunity to just be more present, to notice more things, because otherwise you'll just feel like you're constantly racing. You're racing against yourself. You're racing against time. And it's just such a horrible way to live. I've lived like that for most of my life. But learning now that you can actually still get shitloads done, but just be more present and notice, the sun streaming through the windows, through one of my favourite things, actually, I actually have a whole little shelf of disco balls of varying sizes. And in the evenings when late afternoon, the sun comes into the kitchen, and it catches the disco balls, and there's just like all these amazing, like, it's like being in a disco, lights coming off the balls. It's like, oh my goodness. The other one which I have, which everybody could do, is the moment I get into bed in the evening, in my bed, I just am always like, oh my God, I love my bed. It's just like, I just love my bed so much. But it's just taking that second just to register it, to notice it, and that's it, and then it can go. You don't have to dwell on it, but it's just being grateful for it in that precise moment.
Exactly. And I'm going to say my favorite word, it all comes down to awareness. It really does, because if we're not aware, then we're not going to notice, because we have to be aware in order to notice. And also the other thing is, the kind of flip side of that is, we need to start noticing when we are in that dorsal or sympathetic state. So we've got to be aware of when we're not feeling in balance. And that just by, do you feel anxious? Do you feel worried? Do you feel sad? It's always your emotions, how you feel is always going to tell you kind of where you are on that ladder. So it starts with noticing when you're out of balance, so that you can then do something to bring yourself back into balance. And also, you said, we're all busy, but you know what? None of us are too busy for Glimmers. None of us, because they don't have to take any time, and they can literally be a part of your day. Like, said earlier, walking down the street, you give somebody a smile, they smile back. There's a glimmer right there that hasn't taken any time out of your day. There is no excuse for it. It's just starting to notice those moments and notice those really little things. It can be just appreciating how fucking amazing clouds are. I sometimes look at clouds and go, oh my God, clouds are amazing. Do you know what I mean? Or going back to birds, looking at a bird flying past the window. Oh my God, how amazing are birds. It sounds so silly, but it really is these glimmers can be found in the smallest, tiniest things. And I love your example of, rather than getting into bed and just like not even thinking about how amazing it is, and just like lying there and then starting to let your mind whir about something that you're worried about, it's an opportunity to just recognize, let me just take a minute and enjoy this freaking moment. Let me just enjoy this moment just for 5 seconds, and then I can carry on worrying about whatever I was worrying about, But it's such an easy win. And ultimately, the more you can notice these things, and the more that you can train your mind to find the glimmers, to look for them, the more you're going to find them, the more you're going to notice them, and the better you're going to feel. This is just everything you and I talk about. It all is going, all rivers lead to the same ocean. We're trying to talk about things that help us just feel better. Because ultimately, we all have the same fucking thing that we want to do. All of us want to feel good. That's it. That's really what we're all looking for. And all the things that you and I talk about, that's really what it's about, isn't it? It's just doing things that allow you just to feel a little bit better. So you just live a better life.